And for all of you beautiful people who are joining, we'd love to see your faces. So if you want to turn your camera on, that would be awesome. Cool. So as people continue to join, I will continue to admit them. I turned the doorbell off so that we don't have to hear them in the background as they come in. And I'll just get started with what's happening here today. So first and foremost, happy Tuesday. Secondly, happy Black History Month. I'm Brittany Applegate. I work here at Social Deviant as the Senior Manager of Brand Engagement, and we are kickstarting something new that we like to call Deviant Talks, where we are inviting individuals who are super talented, probably majority Chicago-based, who've done some amazing things with working in the creative space. And we want them to come in and tell their stories, but not just to tell their stories, but to teach something that each of us can literally take away and apply to the work that we do in our everyday lives and also professionally. And so for the first one, we are going to have Johnnie Lovett, who's going to introduce himself a bit more in detail. But just to give you some background as to how I know Johnnie, he and I both attended Illinois State University together. And there was this period of time when I would notice that he would go home a couple days during the week, and we both were in the College of Business as marketing students. And I asked him one day, like, yo, why do you keep going home? Like, what's going on? And he's like, oh, well, I'm interning at this multicultural ad agency called Common Ground. And it was like at that moment that he told me everything that he was doing, that I switched the marketing sequence that I was a part of to integrating marketing communications. I focused on getting into advertising. As some time went by, I got in. And the first agency that I worked at was the agency that he worked at, and we worked together for a while. And while I was there, I can definitely say that Johnnie is the foundation for everything that I know about brand strategy. He literally pulled me in and would sit me in meetings with him, sit me next to him, and teach me a lot of the strategies. So though we don't work at the same company today, we still remain very close. And he's a beast in all that he does. So at this point, I am going to be quiet. Johnnie, I'm going to hand it over to you. I am going to make it possible for you to share your screen, which is possible now. And I want you to take it over. So thank you.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you, Brittany. You know, I always appreciate the kind words. And I'm a beacon for, pulling people into this industry. I think in the spirit of Black History Month, this industry right now is 5% African-American. And I've had the opportunity to talk to a lot of different people just about just advertising, the Tom Burrells of the world, the Bill Sharps, who are like classic, ad veterans, pioneers, if you will. So I really love this industry. I'm passionate about what we do. And I love like how Brittany has grown. So I won't like go down that path, Brittany. You're super dope, and I appreciate it. So I'll properly introduce myself. I'm Johnnie Lovett. I think you guys have seen me, so I'm going to share my screen now. So I will dive into this. Let me go into presentation mode. So I'm Johnnie Lovett. I am currently the Director of Strategy and Integration at 1035, and I'll tell you guys a little bit about that. But before we dive into that, I wanted to just share with you guys what I do, right? So I'm a brand strategist by day and by trade. And typically what I do, whether it's with 1035 or through my business, I provide fresh perspective workshops. And so it's really a series of strategy and insights marketing modules to help brands champion their connections to consumers and communities they serve, right? So at a super high level, it's the super really smart stuff that you guys go to agencies for. In a very layman's terms, it's connecting insights to action. So what's happening in the world, where are those things happening, and where are the opportunities for brands to take advantage of those things. So with that being said, who I am, I'm a strategist, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a brand architect. I do a lot of different things by day and a lot of different things by night, and it's really fun. The beauty of working at 1035 as the Director of Strategy and Integration is that we are a young agency we're at our 5-year mark, and we are trailblazing, and it's been a really interesting path to have been a part of bigger agencies, watch things crash and burn, to be able to build something small and grow. So that's really cool. And then I own businesses. So I work with my wife who owns Culada's Kitchen. She's got a seasoning brand. I've got a clothing brand, and then I work with 2 artists. So those 2 crazy looking logos at the bottom them. One's a painter, is a really good friend of mine named Blue the Great, and the other is an artist. So I share this because I think it's very interesting when you are a strategist to be in culture and to be, in a lot of different things, right? So I want to get out of today being able to take you guys through just like a lot of data that I see surrounding African Americans. I know this is a multicultural module, but I am going to lean into African Americans because it's Black History Month. And I would love to field any questions that you guys have at large, but this is going to be AA specific. So I do want to give that caveat. And as we dive in, we're going to do an icebreaker. And I think this icebreaker is going to be a really interesting way to kind of lay the foundation for a lot of the things I want to talk to you guys about today. And then also, I think it'll be a little bit of inspiration for the Q&A section that we'll come into later. So we'll start with that icebreaker. We'll dive into the multicultural mindset. That's going to be heavy AA. Caveat. We'll talk a little bit about how brands are what brands are doing, brands in action. And then I'll have a couple of gems to leave you guys behind before we get into the Q&A section. So have you ever seen Idiot Test? It is one of my favorite shows. It is really, really cool. And one of the things that I love doing with these types of panels and moments is to take like a classic game show that's on TV that's everybody's seen and give them a real marketing challenge through the lens of that game show, right? So here are the icebreaker rules. I sometimes am really, really good with navigating Zoom, so I will be able to see the chat. So I encourage you guys to use the chat. That's going to be the first thing. Take a moment to digest the visual that's going to be in front of you. It's going to come on the next slide. Once you've identified what's wrong, I want you to drop the letter in the chat that best reflects your response, right? There's no pressure. You won't be called out. I'm not going to say any names. This is a friendly exercise, but I want to be very transparent about this process, right? So going to go into the next slide. Again, don't forget the rules. Take a look, digest it, drop a letter in the chat that responds to the question that you're going to see. And there's no pressure, okay? All right, so here we go. Idiot test, go. So take a look at what you see. I'm going to play the host, right? There's a bunch of different visuals. There's a bunch of different words. There's circles and there's letters. What I'd like you to do is identify the problem. And I'll give you guys 30 seconds. And I got a stopwatch over here. And then we'll get into the good stuff. So B, cool. A lot of B's. 20 seconds. 10 seconds. I love the engagement. Yes. Tight. A lot of familiar names too. All right, so I'm gonna stop. I'll pause it there. So a lot of B's. Actually, everyone put B. Somebody put A, which is interesting. Somebody put A and B. All right, let's go to the answer. The answer is C. Now, if you guys paid close attention, you'll see the word focus over C. And I purposely chose this Gap campaign because it was one of the things that was very polarizing in the culture of fashion and just in marketing at large, right? We saw this come out. The narrative was that it was offensive, and it really wasn't, right? This young family to the right is actually just a group of sisters, and we didn't know that before it went out, but it went viral, right? Now, the reality is that in those focus groups, or when you have the opportunity to talk to consumers, they would have asked that question. What's the relationship between these consumers? What's happening? There's also a chance that they could have talked to people in testing. Everything goes into testing, right? These people aren't making blind investments. So maybe you're talking to the wrong people in testing. That's not giving you the proper context. And so I wanted to share this because I think a lot of times we like to blame the brands for the end result. And that's the reality of culture, right? Culture is going to bite you in the butt at the end of the day if you don't respect it. However, there's a lot of things that we can do before these things leave our doors. And it is about focus. And focus has a very wide spectrum. The focus group that you have, the focus on what you're trying to achieve, and the focus that the consumer is going to take when they're watching this, right? We do research, we have those heat maps. Sometimes those heat maps tell the story, and sometimes you have to have that additional conversation with consumers. So just wanted to do a gut check right there with this conversation, just around like what the problem is. And I don't think you guys are wrong. B was definitely the problem, but that's the outcome. I think as marketers and as advertisers, there's an opportunity for us to be a lot more proactive in the work that we do. And so I want to talk to you guys a little bit about that today. There's a reality that, yes, we're talking multicultural, but multicultural is the new mainstream. We have this quote from Eva Nielsen: multicultural consumers gravitate to brands, products, and activity that reinforce that reinforce their cultural roots, and these behaviors are affecting the purchase behavior of non-multicultural consumers. So we know that when we are creating multicultural based campaigns, that we're going to have the opportunity to have mainstream appeal. A lot of times we are looking at, multicultural through the lens of the data. A lot of times it's actually through the lens of the cultural context. And I chose this picture to the right of this young Black designer from Chicago. His name is Christopher Kites. He's super awesome. I actually met Christopher Kites when he was like 14. I had spoke at an entrepreneurship, class, and he was interested in becoming an entrepreneur. And lo and behold, this kid would probably pay my salary today. And so this was super interesting because he's a young Black kid that took this concept of costume jewelry and has actually made it of value in a real life thing for consumers, and tapping into toys, into this era of nostalgia in a way that's been really, really awesome. And to think that this was going to be very niche to a consumer group because he's an African-American, because we see entrepreneurship rising and growing like crazy, these guys are thinking outside of the box. And I think when brands are able to tap into them or tap into culture at large, you're able to see results at a substantial rate. So then let's continue to look at the data, right? Black Americans lead with influence. We know that this Nielsen report from 2017 has been flying around, right? 73% of whites and 67% of Hispanics believe that Blacks influence mainstream culture. We know that that's true because of the data, right? But what I want to challenge you guys to do today is look beyond the data. The data is very much so a way to navigate your way through culture. Data is going to tell you what you should be thinking about and paying attention to, but culture is going to tell you how people are responding to the data, right? So I brought this photo of Vogue. It's a compilation of what looks like actual Vogue magazine covers, but they're not. This is UGC. This is all user-generated content. If you're on the social team, or if you're a director of any type of social media and you're looking for results, you would probably think that, wow, this is amazing, right, for a brand. But Vogue didn't produce this, consumers did. And I think the reality when you think about mainstream culture, Anna Wintour herself had to step up and respond to the fact that Vogue wasn't delivering on the representation that they should have, which is why this was spawned. And so something that looks so beautiful for a brand is really just a result of consumers' influence. And again, being rooted in, understanding how culture is coming to life and what that data is telling us and how it's showing up. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is inclusivity, right? It's more than reflection. So we're looking at, things like, okay, because, Black consumers want, brands to reflect their culture. They want brands to reflect, their values. And I think this photo in the background, I've for the life of me was searching for an appropriate photo from Rihanna's Fenty Savage fashion show. And it was the hardest thing that I've probably done in a long time. And so this is the one photo that I was able to bring in. And I wanted to share it because I think her brand does an amazing job at talking about inclusivity and actually showing it all the way through the line. So, we know that the amazing Cheryl Grace from Nielsen, I'll read this quote, more than 80% of African Americans say that they relate to ads and images that connect with our culture. Thoughtfully inclusive means that you're not simply dropping a Black actor or actress into the script. That's extremely important. And I think that's the challenge that Gap thought they had overcame with that ad, right? But the reality is that, for a non-person of color, you're going to be thoughtfully inclusive about how you reflect them. So you have to have that conversation, right? You want to be able to tap into what is the insight and the nuance, but be able to give that breath by looking at, the multi-dimensionalist, aspect of these consumers, and looking at how, inclusion is really a bigger conversation than reflection. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get into the gems later on. The other thing that's important about this consumer group is that optimism is alive and well for them. It's a generational mindset, a cross-generational mindset. And one of the things that I wanted to call out here was the look at centennials. I think with Gen X, there was a lot of optimism about being able to succeed and have careers in life. For millennials, for us, it was about starting businesses and building new trends. And for centennials, it really is about an elevated lifestyle, and they believe that they will become rich in their lifetime. And so it's interesting. I brought these examples here that aren't directly connected to the data, but I wanted to give the two examples of Music Breaker, which is a music app that actually helps break artists and helps do that through the lens of influencers. And it actually was started by an account director at 1035 by the name of Dan Ware and his friends. And it's a really, really awesome app. And they're getting evaluations. They're doing a lot of different things. And this is really the mindset that, you know, these are a group of guys that are already successful in corporate America, but the optimism of where they can go and what they can build as a collective is driving them to something more powerful. And so that's really interesting, because I love how a lot of brands are starting to tell the stories of how you know, these organic things are happening in culture, and actually, you know, driving enterprise, and being able to help, you know, jumpstart a lot of those things that are happening. I think on the other side of the coin is a platform like Clubhouse, right? Like, people are literally selling invites to Clubhouse. And it's amazing. But one of the things that I love about Clubhouse is for some time I had sat back and I'm like, we can't possibly get another social media platform. I don't think it's possible. And then you look up and Clubhouse emerges, right? And it emerges at a time where we're in a pandemic. People are trying to find things to do, and for the life of them can't figure out where does networking go now? You know, networking is now all weird because it's, you know, all Zoom conversations and Twitter, and then Clubhouse pops up, and then a couple months later you can find yourself in a room with Elon Musk, right? It's amazing. And so optimism is something that you're seeing, you know, come to life in an incredible way. And a lot of the founders, I believe there are some African-American founders on the Clubhouse team that are driving this new wave, you know, very similar to a rising star, which I would call Breaker. So the optimism thing is something that's going to continue to be a driving force for this consumer. And I think it's why you continue to see them bounce back and react to things that are happening. You know, achieving a better quality of life. You know, Black consumers are 20% more likely than the total population to agree that I'm willing to pay extra for a product that is consistent with the image that I want to convey. For a lot of time, and I've done a ton of spirits work in my past, a lot of times we thought that this was just about reflecting luxury and portraying a certain lifestyle, but there's a lot of empathy that consumers are expecting, and there's a lot of nuance and depth that they're looking for that I think brands had championed at one point in time when it was more base level luxury. But now consumers are looking for that context. They're looking for not just, you know, the things that they can say are, you know, valuable, but they want to feel that value in the experiences that they have for brands, and they're willing to pay for that value. They're living an interconnected lifestyle. You know, Black consumers are 41% more likely to agree that advertising on smartphones provides me with useful information on bargains. I love this data point because it is like a quarter. It has two different sides, right? On the head side, where you think about bargains and you think about being in Jewel, I'm always like, my wife and I go back and forth about who's going to clip at the grocery store because we've got to get our savings. And then on the other end, there's also this idea that if ComplexCon is going to drop a Murakami you know, release at 4 p.m., the only time I'm going to be able to do that and get it is on my phone, because I could probably be on a Zoom call. So understanding that, you know, the mobile phone and the smartphone era, we're well beyond universality, and we really have to understand how that interconnected lifestyle is leveraging that mobile phone, and it's sitting at the center point of everything that these consumers are doing. And so I love to lean into like the more cool cultural things like a complex land. But when you know, peel back the data or peel back the layers on data when it comes to African Americans and especially millennials, when it comes to things like couponing and those types of things, they're sparking and over indexing at a high level with those things. So just understanding how that mobile phone plays a role in the way that you engage with consumers, whether you're a CPG brand or B2B, or, you know, wherever you are on that landscape, mobile is going to be at the centerpiece of how you're engaging with consumers and ultimately how you're going to grow your brand in the future. And then there's this notion of valuing meaningful connections, right? So 86%, you know, of African Americans agree that they'll be loyal to brands that make sincere efforts to better their community. 82% buy from companies that actively promote diversity and inclusion. And 75% say that not enough brands do a good job of representing people like me in my community, right? These are stats that I love because they're very true. But the one thing that I love to push brands on is the fact that you can stand up and you can say something, but it's about creating an ongoing dialogue, right? And so I dropped in, I was debating whether or not I was going to put in the photo of Kaepernick because sometimes it can be polarizing, but I wanted to go back here, right? For two reasons. The first one is that I love how unapologetic Nike is, right? Nike gets behind things that they believe in, but Nike also does a good job of listening. And we'll talk about a friend of Nike that also does a good job of listening when we get into the brand sections. But I wanted to bring this Kaepernick piece in because I bought Nike stock at like around the time that this stuff started happening. And when I tell you that Nike has become the most successful, they've had their best years from a profit perspective after doing this. And it makes me feel it's bittersweet, right? It's like they understood the investment in this community, and they also understood that if they were unapologetic about it, that they would see the benefits of it. So I think that this is a great example of not just, like, I know this case has come up 1,000 times in conversations around like responding to social injustice and everything that's going on. And I think it's a powerful case, but I also think you have to think about the return on empathy, right? And that's a whole nother thing that I didn't want to go into here, because I want to talk more about that in future talks. But there's a heavy return on empathy that's happening in the marketplace right now for brands that have been there over time. A lot of the brands, those I like to call them the black box brands that posted that black box on Instagram, you're very new into the conversation and you don't necessarily understand what's going on. A brand like Nike's been there. And I think that the opportunity is not to tear those brands down because they don't understand. It's actually to say that, hey, there's a space where you can always start and build a new, a new narrative with consumers, and especially with African-American consumers. And the video here, I won't play it, but I encourage you guys to look it up. It's the Target honey pot spot. And I'm a huge fan of honey pot because it was in my house before I knew it was a Black brand. It's like, the stuff is just dope. It works, it's good. And Target is like, I'm sure everybody on this call has been in Target and spent way more money than you intended to spend, because it's just a great place. But long story short, I love what Target is doing with reinforcing their support of Black brands and actually going into the community of where these brands are being incubated and finding the right opportunities to elevate people. And this is something that has been ongoing for them and that they're doing. And then I think the content and the things that come to light from the work that they're doing, they lead with that. And I just applaud Target. I like that they've been through a lot of like controversial things, if you will, if you've really been paying attention. But they've responded well and in the right way, right? They're creating enterprise for these entrepreneurs. They're not just creating content series and things to talk about them or just perpetuate what they're doing. They're creating new platforms. And I think Nike, did that as well, but through a more campaign kind of focused effort.
My name is Beatrice.
So I won't play that video, but I do encourage you guys to look it up. So I'm going to get into like a bit of a lightning round over the next couple of slides, where I want to talk about just some brands, actions, and some things that I've seen that I think are really, really interesting and thought-provoking. And then we'll go into a quick gems, the last things that I want to leave you guys with, and then we'll go into a Q&A. And I'm watching time. I know we've got a lot of time, and I wanted to make sure that we can field a lot of questions because I typically move fast and I shared a lot of data. But I wanted to, go through all of that to get to this first kind of not case study, but just brand overview that I wanted to talk about. And it's Gap, right? So we started with Gap, and I want to come back to Gap. And we've talked through, all the data about, meaningful connections, about, brands investing in, Black communities, investing in, creativity, investing in, understanding this target. And I think that this Gap example is a really, really interesting example for me, because like I'm a strategist by day, but I'm an entrepreneur. So I'm always thinking about the business, right? And I have a love-hate relationship with the Gap for this particular approach. And so to the left, you have Telfar, who is this amazing Black designer. I would say was probably the best, one of the number one designers in 2020, if not, the number one. He probably had a lot of competition from, Kirby over at Pyre Moss. But this guy was amazing. And when you talk about like his purses release and they drop and people buy them in 30 seconds, and they take months to come because they have to build them. They can't like produce enough. They have to do pre-orders. And so this guy's like buzz was crazy. And he got this opportunity to work with Gap in 2020 at the height of his career, in a sense, or at the height of his wave, if you will. And then here comes Kanye, and Kanye gets an opportunity to work with Gap. And now I don't know what happened behind the scenes, but if I'm reading between the lines and it's Kanye, and it's a guy that's big ego, however you like to dissect that, I can imagine that he wants to be the top guy. And so it's really interesting that the backstory here with Gap is that they got rid of Telfar's entire collection. They paid him for it. They got rid of it. And they said, hey, we'd rather scrap this for other projects that we have going on. And they went the Kanye route. Now, of course, I know that there's a lot of different legal conversations and things that go on behind closed doors, but this was important to me to share with you guys because I wanted to talk about meaningful versus mass, right? A lot of brands are faced with this choice of whether or not you choose meaningful versus mass. I think there is a way for balance. And I think that But Gap didn't choose the balance, right? I think that there's an opportunity for them to have been, a little bit more ingrained in the community. Telfar represents LGBTQ plus. He represents a lot of different things that, diverse communities are looking forward to. And then you have the trickle down effect of him being, African-American male. There were a lot of different things that they could check the box on from a meaningful perspective in the conversations that they could have with working with a designer like him versus just going the mass route, which we see a lot of brands do. And neither is right or wrong. But I just wanted to share this example because I love the context that lives, in the underlining stories of how you could be the best designer, the best at your sport, the best at what you do. And, the corporate environment still, steals that thunder from you. So this was important. And a lot of times brands don't think about themselves as, the deciding factors here. We really are, and I think a lot of times you have to choose, is this going to be for meaning or mass? And we know that sometimes meaning does push ROI, and I call it ROE. And we saw that with the Nike work, and we're seeing it right now with the Target work. I'm very eager to this works out for Gap. Again, I like to equate things to how the market is moving too. So I know that Gap stock is rising because of these changes. And the Telfar piece wasn't a huge hiccup, but again, it's, as a strategist, I want to understand those layers and what's really happening with these companies, and how it can inform, how we direct our brands moving forward. The other example that I want to give is the NBA, right? I super love the NBA for their ability to just take a step back, shut up, and listen. And they listen, they learn, and then they act it, right? And so in the top right corner, there's this example from Bill Russell. It's a really old newspaper article where Bill Russell is talking about him being, a 6'10" center in the league, and he's dealing with these issues of racial injustice. And you look I couldn't find a date on this clip, but you look so many years later, and we're in the same position, right? And at that time where obviously the NBA, probably just wasn't in a position to respond and react the way that players would have wanted them to. You fast forward so many years later and you see players stepping up and they're protesting and they're doing all these different things to talk about the reality of what's happening. And I think the NBA for a long time was just kind of watching, right? And then I think they started listening and they started to learn, right? This isn't about us. This is just about giving the players a platform. A lot of times brands that win, they take a step back and they give the community a platform. And that's a tough thing to do. But a lot of times, again, that return on empathy, the investment is in making the best decisions for the people that you're talking to because it can pay you back. And so for the first time ever, we saw, mass public facilities become, voting sites, and to see the entire, every arena that the NBA could open at the time become a polling place was very interesting. And so I think a lot of times this also sparked a lot of the conversations that Roger Goodell and the NFL were having, right? Because they had been dealing with this issue and not responding well at all. And now I think you're seeing a turn of the tide, if you will, in the narrative because of the approach that, that brands and businesses ultimately are taking. The last brand example that I'll give is actually something that we worked on as an agency at 1035. And it's from our Gushers work. And so I wanted to share this. I know Brittany's going to ask me about one of one of my favorite brands I worked on or something like that. So I won't steal her thunder, but I wanted to share this example because it's one of the pieces of work that we've done that is actually starting to win awards and get a lot of notoriety. And it is really how we chose to identify a true problem that existed and solve for it. And so the in presentation mode, it's coming up super weird. So I will just caveat or Brittany, I can see some of you guys. Can you give me a thumbs up? Can you see the black box? You can? Okay, perfect. All right. So I wanted to pull this up because we're still, this is an ongoing project that we're working on, but the first leg of our case study for the work that we did with Gushers was actually in response to the George Floyd, everything that happened. And so we were trying to figure out, what should we do as a brand? This is a brand that over indexes, extremely with young Black teens that benefits a lot from Black culture, but hadn't really chose, to say anything or do anything. And so the very first thing that we did was we sought out partners, right? And so I am a huge fan of the NAACP. I think the NAACP is table stakes. Don't get me wrong. I think that if you are a brand and you don't have any foundation like we did, I think it's a perfect partner because it allows you to understand what the community needs and work with somebody that is that is conditioned and understands how to help you create that impact. Now, if you've done things and you're a little bit further along the line, you can be a little bit more creative with your partners. But anywho, long story short, we wanted to partner with somebody that would help us direct our funds into the right place. And so we started working on, we started with the donation to the youth and college division. And that was, $200,000. And then we were like, okay, we're going to do that. But now what do we really do? And so we sat down with the client and we just had a soul searching conversation. Like, what do we want to, what do we want to represent and what do we want to solve for these consumers? And we benefit from Black creatives where we posting our stuff. If that is the muse or that's the target, how can we help them? What do they need help with? And then we looked at our data, right? Data is always going to be there. Where are we spending the most money from a media perspective and where are we getting the biggest response? And it was on TikTok. So it's like, okay, well, the data is telling us that we need to do something and it needs to be on TikTok. So what's happening on TikTok? And so I literally spent with my team, maybe 100 hours of just watching TikTok videos. And 100 hours is a lot of short seconds of videos. And I stumbled upon this video of Naomi Brooke. And I want to play this video, and then I'm going to play a bit into the case of how we responded, and in one of the consumer videos that was a part of the campaign. But this video is very important. And as you can see, it is not pretty. It's not going to be graphic or anything, but it is very important that I give the caveat that it is emotional, and it touches on something that I think we are never really privy to until you start really digging at the problem. And I think this is important because a lot of brands are really puzzled about how they can address things like this, or even if they have the right to, right? So I'm gonna play this video and then we'll go from super, super emotional to very lighthearted and positive, with the example. So I'll play this, I'll play a couple seconds of it. You guys will get the gist and then I'll explain the context and then we'll keep going.
Well, I am so angry right now. I made a video about George Floyd. They deleted the sound, they reported the sound, and now it's gone. It got so many likes and shares.
So I'll stop it there and jump back in. So clearly, this young lady, Naomi Brooke, who's a TikTok influencer, this video that she posted about George Floyd that you see screenshotted in the background. It had 1.2 million likes, as you can see. And the current video that she's making now, it's got 780. So the people were coming back to the content, but that first video that she posted was happening in real time. I want to say maybe the day after George Floyd or something like that. But somehow the TikTok algorithm, it wasn't a specific person, at least they say it wasn't, but the TikTok algorithm actually removed the sound from her video and flagged it as controversial. We understand that was a very controversial moment, but this is a form of suppression that we had not experienced or even knew was happening on TikTok. And it was very polarizing to us. And so these are kind of out of place. I wanted to make sure that the little black box didn't cover up the actual video. So I would have put this second. We made the announcement and then we started digging and trying to figure out what we could do, right? And so we decided, well, we would come up with another 200K and we would actually partner with influencers on TikTok, young Black influencers, to break the algorithm, right? So we wanted to challenge them to create a positive video about being Black, about being a Black creator, and about the importance of it. And for every like that video got, we would donate $1 to that cause and to the NAACP Youth and College Division. And of course, we've seen, the match conversations before. We've seen people, buy one, give one, and all that good stuff. So we wanted to take a very simple mechanism, apply it to a place where it's happened before, I believe, on TikTok, but in a way that had never been done before. And so we went out and we found, we selected 4 influencers. We chose 2 people that were very much on the rise, not super well known, but on the rise, and 2 influencers that not many people had known. And we wanted to do that in order to not only raise the value for everyone being a part of an official campaign, but also give them a platform to create good by just doing what they're already doing anyway and creating content and evangelizing Black creativity. So I'll play our response video and what we actually put out as the call to action, and then I'll play one of the videos from our influencers.
We believe in elevating young Black voices in places where they've been suppressed. That's why we've teamed up with some of the most unique voices on TikTok: Zyra B, Jonathan Bino, Jalen Felice, and Taylor Cassidy. We're turning their posts into tools for change using the hashtag Black Voices Create. For every like these videos receive, Gushers and Fruit by the Foot will donate $1 to the NAACP Youth and College Division to support young Black leaders. We know Black voices create culture, but they do so much more. They create art, trends, joy, movement, and most importantly, Black voices create change.
Awesome. So that was the culmination of the campaign, and I'm sure the videos that you guys are putting together when you do your brand recaps and all that good stuff. So I'll play like the actual content. People saw this, but then this is the actual content from one of our influencer partners, Taylor Cassidy.
Y'all, if you're a teenager, here's some ways you can use your voice to uplift Black voices. Child talking, you can do anything. You can create art, you can use music and sing or not. If you decorate cakes, you could decorate a cake. You can use any one of your abilities. Your voice has the power to create change. I know for a fact you have a hobby that is waiting to be shared with the rest of the world. And I also know that that little hobby that you think is small can change somebody's whole vision and even inspire them to create. Wait. You can start right now. Your like on this video equals $1 the Gushers will donate to the NAACP Youth and College Division. So all I gotta do is press that heart? Right, it's so easy. So what are you waiting for?
Cool. So I wanted to share that. I love this campaign because I think we took something that was very negative, and like I said, if you have any type of empathy attached to the work that you do, that was like a bit of a emotional roller coaster, at least for me working on this project, because I didn't realize it, like this was really happening. And so we were able to successfully break the algorithm on TikTok for one day. It only took us, I think it took us 12 hours to get the full investment from everybody liking the videos. And we raised the profile of these influencers like crazy. Like Taylor Cassidy, you're gonna see her in a movie or something one day, because like she was in a commercial like the week after we did this. So it's pretty interesting. But saying all that to say, the gems that I want to leave behind with you guys before we go into the current Q&A portion, and I open the floor back up to Brittany. There's 5 altogether. So the first one is invest in context. I think that a lot of times we invest in content, a lot of times we invest in big ideas. Context is king. Context is where our investments are going to extend the test of time. And I think that it really goes back to that gap example that we gave early on, where you can avoid a lot of things that happen on the back end if you are just proactive with the conversations that you're having and you're choosing the right people, right? We do focus groups, we do all these things that we invest in, but we don't always take the proper context of even looking at the methodologies and how they're being built to how we're recruiting, the people that we're talking to and everything. The next one is connect the data to culture, right? So I love to look at what data is telling us, even historical data and real-time data, but where is that happening in the world, right? If 300 to 400%, if there's a 300 to 400% in entrepreneurship for Black consumers, from 2017 to 2019, where are those businesses? Where are they popping up? What's happening? Reaching beyond representation, right? Knowing that we are well beyond the age of just checking the box on talent that looks like the people we're talking to. It's about the conversations that we're having, and it's really about understanding these consumers and then being able to understand how they would want to be represented through the lens of your brand. Building trust in your strategic partners, right? I commend you guys for doing this. Like I'm doing this for brands a lot, whether it's through my business, through 1035 and some of the larger partners that we work with. But I am always a beacon of encouraging our partners to build trust with us, with their other partners, because we're in this thing to win, right? I talk a lot about ROE, but ROI is the name of the game, right? P&L. We have to be successful, and you cannot do that without building trust in your partners, and you can't put anything out into market that you don't have that full alignment and trust in doing. And then humanize your brand actions. I think the last thing that I would want to leave you guys with as marketers is to think about how consumers would do it or how they are going to experience it, right? Like a lot of us aren't UX designers, but the concept of UX and integration is one step to the next. Like, what is that human moment that we want to capture and win this consumer in, and what's happening in those moments? And if that doesn't exist, clearly it's a white space, but what's relevant to that consumer to now make that new experience, comfortable and an easy transition for them. So humanize your brand actions. And with that, I think that puts us at 12:40. So that's a full 38 minutes of just me talking. So I hope it was enjoyable. And then I'll have this Q&A slide come up, and then I'll just exit out of this so that we can chat.
Well, first and foremost, Johnnie, that was absolutely amazing. I know we all can't clap, but we can do silent claps, just to say thank you for that and for sharing that knowledge. It was much needed and absolutely engaging. So thank you. So what we'll do now is in these final 20 minutes, we definitely want to open the floor for Q&A. And I have a couple questions, but I'll just start off with one. And if you would like to ask a question, I just ask that you raise your hand. So over where it says participants, you're able to raise your hand, and then I'll unmute you and call your name, and just feel free to ask any question that you have. Okay, so my first question for you, Johnnie, is I think coming out of last year's justice uprisings, we saw a lot of companies say, you know, okay, we got to stand in solidarity. And there was also a lot of internal panic from let's add some people of color to this deck to, you know, let's figure out how do we switch up our campaign strategy so that it does look more inclusive. And a lot of this did come from general market or total market focused agencies. So my question for you is, how can general market agencies or brands with predominantly white teams create multicultural ads authentically?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to have a multicultural partner, and if it's not a partner, you have to invest in that team, right? So from a corporate side, you know, a lot of the bigger companies, the PepsiCos of the world, they have ERGs, right? They've got employee resource groups, and those people are specifically invested in to be a part of a community that can bring back, you know, consumer based, like very specific information and real true information through the lens of the corporation, and help bridge that gap. So I think that you have to invest in the right partners. You know, a lot of times those people are internally depending on what your budgets are. But if you could bring in an external partner to work with, or you know, help you bridge that gap, I think you have to do that. I know I have a lot of visibility to different agencies because of like just knowing people in the industry. And a lot of times, you know, agencies will hire people of color, and I think we want that to happen, but I think that those people automatically kind of become the voice of reason. And you have to understand that could be a lot of pressure on people too. So I think even in agencies that don't have a great, you know, you don't have a lot of, you know, people of color working in your agency, use those people to tap into other people. That's why I love, you know, what we're doing here with Social Deviants, because I'm not 100% familiar, Brittany, with you guys' setup, but, you know, speaking to people like me that are marketers, that love what they do, that are passionate about the work that they do, and just getting an unfiltered perspective. I think that you have to do that. And, you know, I would approach the process of humanizing your brand the same way that you approach, you know, putting your scope of work together, because you don't want to miss a dollar. I think you don't want to miss the context, you know, that can champion you for it either.
Love that. I'll pause to see if anyone else has any questions. Oh yeah, we have one from Steph. So feel free to unmute yourself.
Okay, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, how's it going? All right, so first of all, great talk, Johnnie. Appreciate you sharing your perspective as always, dropping gems. My question is, you spoke earlier about just the extremely low number of just African Americans in the industry. And I'm aware of just a lot of the programs just through doing research, the Marcus Garvey scholarships and the different programs that I've seen highlighted. But just as far as someone who is already out of college, and I'm trying to make it general so it could kind of help everyone, not just myself, but just someone who's out of college, they love the industry, they're familiar with, you know, the industry itself, and just wants to be involved and start trying to enter the industry. What would be some suggestions you would give from your perspective on the best route for that?
Yeah. I mean, I think you have to build a book. And when I say build a book, like a lot of times that's a creative thing, but I think any advertising is a visual industry at the end of the day. So if you write insights, you know, if you're a data person, analytics, whatever you do, I think you have to put together a book of your work and show real world application of that work if you're not able to like get an internship or something like that. So I think that's one side of it. The other side of it is finding, joining organizations and things that can give you more visibility to the industry and those opportunities, and can, for lack of a better word, help bridge the gap to those opportunities. So I think it's twofold. It's like one of the things that I've seen a lot of creatives do, and Steph, I know a little bit more about the context behind this question. So like what I've seen a lot of other creatives do is actually create mock campaigns or things that are reflective to the types of work that you would ultimately try to turn into a client. If you are a researcher, or if you're an insights person, like I would build create a case study or create a research project on something like how are people faring with the price changes on StockX versus all of the emerging brands that are coming out. Like what do people feel about Mercari going public, or Farfetch buying up all these brands? Like create something that's built around what you're interested in, do a focus group on it, do something that you can show a professional output from, and present that as proof of concept. And I think that is the one thing that I think a lot of us don't think through when we're in that process is like, what would you turn into a client? Turn it into the person that you want to hire you.
Got you. Thank you.
Okay. Johnnie, I have another question for you that I didn't say you before, but I think it's super helpful, especially to a lot of us who are researching and are looking for the insights, and definitely want to make sure that we are finding the right insights that we will convert to these creative outputs. What are some best practices that you use to research multicultural audiences, or what are some of your favorite tools?
Social media. So like my day-to-day is literally like Nielsen, Kantar, Mintel, social media, because I'm just literally looking at what's happening in the world. Oh, and like CBNC news and like any type of stock stuff. Like I'm looking at all that stuff, right? Because the world runs on money. The stock market is connected to the world commerce. So I'm looking at what's happening in the market. A lot of those brands that are successful, if they are consumer facing brands, they have really good campaign work, or they got really bad campaign work. So I'm looking at, like, it's the trifecta for me. It's like what's happening in the stock market from a business perspective, what are brands doing from like a marketing perspective, and then what are people talking about on social media? Because sometimes that can track you to trends and things that are happening, or like these like catastrophic shifts that are happening, right? Like Elon Musk being on Clubhouse is a catastrophic shift, because there is no chance in hell that anybody on this call would be able to get into a conversation on Elon Musk, but we all had the opportunity a couple hours ago. And I think that, like, I found out about that because I own stock in Tesla, and I want to know this guy could say something like, Pinterest. He could tweet Pinterest and the stock's going to rise. So I'm looking at that, but I'm also looking at how brands are responding to that, who's taking advantage of those moments, and how are they communicating in those moments. So I don't know. I'm always like, I'm consuming a lot of different things day to day, but I try to not just stay in my lane, right? Like I love a good Nielsen report because I'm a nerd, but what does that mean for the world and, what's happening around us?
I like that you said pay attention to what's going on in the stocks, because I think so often, I think social listening is definitely a big part of my job for figuring out, what is going on in our culture. And also I'm an active participant in what's happening in the culture too. But I've never thought before you said that to pay attention to the stock market and see, where the money is moving and why. And so I think that's a good tip that we can all definitely take from there.
The Robin Hood generation. Like I wasn't a part of Big Short, or I'm not the guys on the Robin Hoods of the world, but I support it though. I think everybody should be investing. But if you've been paying attention to what's happening in the world, that was an interesting time a couple of days ago.
For sure. Oh yeah, I was paying attention. It was kind of like, being back in math class a little bit, and someone needed to send me the Spark Notes, but I figured it out. My last question for you is to focus on multicultural trends and, where these audiences will exist in the future the most. I know that you mentioned Clubhouse. I'm on Clubhouse. I love it. I can't be on there during the day like most people are, but I definitely think it's the new wave. Where do you think a lot of these multicultural audiences, and we can keep it specific to AA audiences, are over-indexing today? And, do you have any outlooks or opinions about that?
Yeah, they're definitely over-indexing in So it's funny, right? We're in a weird time where newspapers newspapers aren't obsolete, right? But remember when everybody's talking about newspapers going to go away, and it's like, no, they're not going to go away. They're just going to become digital. I think that same type of thing is happening with people's attention spans, right? Our attention spans are super short. So therefore the platforms that have shorter form content with a lot of things happening to keep your attention, those are the ones that are winning, right? And then poof, a place like Clubhouse comes about, right? And that's because people are missing the context. And so I think that I think for brands that are, looking to engage or tap into the trends and just understand what's happening, I think you got to know, you have to just look at how people are moving through things and then where the opportunity is for you to engage, right? So one of the things that you're going to see happen in the next couple of months is every brand is going to try to get on Clubhouse and do something. It may not be for everybody. And that's the big thing that I try to push on brands too, is like, there could be a trend and it doesn't mean that you have to tap into it. You need to find out the best way to tap into it. So Clubhouse might not be the way for you, right? Like they just did an entire Lion King musical on Clubhouse a couple months ago. And I was just like, this is kind of, somebody text me like, yo, are you listening to this Lion King thing? And I'm like, no. And they're like, check it out. And I go and I'm like, yo, this is like amazing. Like I'm not even like I don't know. Like I'm not like a person that just likes to hear things. I don't really care for musicals, but it was dynamic. Like it was very well done. And so something like that, where it's like, okay, if my attention span is 8 seconds, I done spent the hour just listening to somebody read a book to me, or read a movie script to me. So it was just interesting. I think that the one thing I said a lot to answer your question, I think that brands should be conscious of what the trends mean for their brand and not just what the trends mean for the people, right? So like, and ask people too, like, if you have influencers, that you have relationships with or people that you're paying, ask them like, what should we do with this? And then evaluate that crazy response that you're going to get up against what's realistic for your brand. But I think not doing anything is never good, and doing what the herd does is never good, right? Herd immunity is only going to work for COVID if it works. It doesn't work in marketing. So don't, be the black box brand, go and talk to people and figure out what you should really be doing or what you really could be doing.
Yeah, that's good. We have another question from Randy.
Hey, thanks, Johnny. This was great. I was just kind of curious, looking at your agency's work specifically, like what kind of legwork should go into picking brand partners, kind of looking back at like Nike and picking the right brand partners that actually, we think of corporations a lot of the times being kind of hollow in moral, and making sure that you're picking brand partners who actually want to kind of get behind the cause rather than just kind of be, following the herd. Yep. As it were. Like I'm looking at a lot of work that, pairing Pepsi with Essence, or, the ACL or the NAACP with Gushers and General Mills.
Yeah, a lot of times it depends on, so I'll answer that question from like a brand strategy perspective and in a business perspective. And I'll start in reverse. So from a business perspective, we're oftentimes choosing our clients based on commonalities with the agency. So like, for example, Gushers, right? So fruit snack brand is CPG. When I tell you I've eaten a lot of Gushers in my lifetime, I've eaten a lot of Gushers in my lifetime. And it's like, to see that brand come full circle and get the opportunity to pitch it, that was something that I was like, yo, we need to go after this if there's ever an opportunity. And so a lot of times it's stuff like that. If an RFP comes up and it's something that has connective tissue to us, like, we have an outdoor brand, in Primaloft that we work with, that, we have some outdoor enthusiasts at our agency. I'm not one of them, but they are very passionate about, the brand in that space. And then they're also just professionals at what they do from an agency perspective. So, I mean, I understand, I'm still in the business space. So like from P&L perspective, sometimes you can service a client and it makes sense, then you do it. But I think we try to take a lot of pride in finding that synergy. And I think that that's how you get, some of the best work. You have people that see themselves in the brands that they work on. So that's what we try to do, just like from a business perspective. Where can we see our people in the work that we're doing? Because we know that that's going to get the best product. From a strategy perspective, it's really just about understanding like what type of advantage can I give a client, right? So even when like we haven't been a big agency for a long time. So there was a point in time where the work that we had, we all worked on. Now where you're in the opportunity where like we've got multiple brands. Now I'm looking for, okay, what's the advantage that I can bring a brand, right? So like Nike, we did a lot of experiential work in the past for Nike. There's no experiential work happening right now. So, what can we do from a research perspective? Well, we understand as consumer, where are the gaps? And so we're probing, a lot of times we're probing clients too on where the gaps might be. You're a billion dollar company. You've seen, amazing growth and upside, but lo and behold, hey, you're overlooking your women's consumer. And that was a conversation that we had with them in 2017. And talk about trying to do consumer research for a brand that is already a $1 billion company. They don't have any challenges. The only challenge that they have is how the hell do we continue to grow? And so we found an insight. We were like, hey, you guys have products for women, but they don't want those products. They want the same stuff that Michael Jordan made famous, just tweaked for them, not in all pink colorways all the time or all this mundane stuff. It's still selling out. It is selling out. So I'm not telling you that it's wrong, but how do you grow, right? How do you push your margins? And so we did some national research. We went to a bunch of different markets talking to women consumers about Jordan Brand, and the nuggets that we came back with transformed the way that they approach their women's business. So now all of the Jordan 1s and the legacies and the Vogue and the winter Jordan 3s that you got, a lot of that stuff was influenced by the research that we did. And they grew their business by 300% just from listening to the consumer within their house that was already happy, but there was a gap. And I think that's a very, it was really powerful for us, because when I got the assignment, quite honestly, I'm like, I love Nike. What I'm gonna tell them that they don't know already, And then I had an aha moment, like, wow, I wasn't looking at it from that perspective, because I'm not the women's target, but the work that we were able to do and, talking to people, getting that context helped us, bring a new level of understanding to the brand. So.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Johnnie. We have about 3 minutes left, so we can wrap up here. As you guys can see, this is why I work in advertising, from having conversations with this guy in the atrium of our College of Business, and just being so fascinated with his mind, and also inspired to take the same career path. And so, Johnnie, my brother, it is so great to see you and to have you on here. And thank you for sharing your knowledge with not only my agency, but so many people who also joined, from our clients, our partners, and people who just know you, me, whoever else, and saw this on social media. So thank you all for joining. This month, we will also have another Deviant Talk that is going to take place on Tuesday, February 23rd, and is going to feature a Black-owned video production company called Digify. They are based here in Chicago, and they're going to talk about, the power of telling diverse stories through a diverse lens. And so what does it look like now to take these insights and we convert them into creative, but then when we convert them into visual creative through video or short form content or documentary films, how do we show this up on film, and then how do we do it authentically? And so again, the goal that we wanted to achieve for Black History Month was not to take people through, Black history lessons and did you know that this happened in 1865. What we wanted to do was really take Black history that's happening now today, the people who are contributing to that, and then putting them at the forefront to tell their stories, so that hopefully we can learn something from them too. And so I hope you all learned something today. If you did, definitely tweet about it, post about it, follow us on Social Deviant. There is where you can find Johnnie and his social media handles, and just tell everybody. So so much. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon, and hopefully we'll see you on Tuesday, the 23rd again.
Thank you all. Enjoy your day.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.